A black woman shuts down her own pool, and a nosy neighbor calls 911. But what Karen didn't know is she just messed with the wrong one. It was a warm September afternoon, the kind where the sun starts to bow out early, leaving a gentle amber hue over the quiet cul-de-sac of Oak Ridge Estates. The neighborhood was mostly peaceful, except when HOA politics got involved, which, unfortunately, was more often than not. That day, the silence was broken not by noise, but by tension. Jada Harris, 34, a tech consultant and recently elected board member of the HOA, had made her way down to the community pool. She carried a small tote bag, her clipboard, and a bottle of cold water. Her natural curls were pulled back into a neat puff, and she wore navy blue joggers and a white hoodie that read "Black women build empires." Jada was here on a mission to officially close the pool for the season. It was her first year living in Oak Ridge Estates, and she'd volunteered for this task, not just because she wanted to be active in her community, but because she believed representation mattered, even in the mundane acts of civic duty. As she unlocked the iron gate, the metal creaked slightly. Jada stepped in, humming to herself. She had already emailed the HOA manager, confirming she'd do the end-of-season inspection and lockup. She double-checked the pump shed, gathered the remaining flotation devices, and carefully documented the inventory. Unbeknownst to her, 2 houses down, behind cream-colored plantation shutters, Martha Cunningham, better known as the unofficial neighborhood Karen, was watching. Martha was a retired school administrator, 62 years old, and proud of her spotless HOA attendance record. She believed in rules, regulations, and routine. But more than anything, Martha believed she was entitled to know everyone and everything that happened in her community. When she saw Jada walk into the pool area, her lips pursed like she'd tasted something sour. She narrowed her eyes and muttered, "I've never seen her before," which wasn't true. Jada had lived across the street from her for 9 months. They'd made eye contact dozens of times. Once, Jada even waved. Martha hadn't waved back. Instead of approaching the pool or checking her HOA email, which clearly listed Jada on the board, Martha picked up her phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, hi. There's a suspicious person at our community pool. I think she's breaking in or vandalizing something. The dispatcher's voice didn't skip a beat. Can you describe the individual? Black female, mid-30s, athletic clothing. She just doesn't look like she belongs here, Martha added, her voice lowering. As the dispatcher began logging the call, police units were dispatched. Meanwhile, Jada continued working, wiping down benches, folding chairs, and carefully placing the pool closed for season sign on the fence. She had earbuds in now, listening to a podcast about community leadership. She was focused, efficient, and unaware she had become the target of someone's warped sense of suspicion. 15 minutes later, sirens echoed through the neighborhood. Jada looked up, her expression shifting quickly from confusion to concern as 2 patrol cars slowly rolled into the lot. Her gut twisted. 3 officers stepped out, 2 men, 1 woman. Their hands hovered near their belts, eyes scanning the pool area. "Ma'am," one officer called out, "we got a report about a possible trespasser at the pool." Jada blinked. "Excuse me?" "We received a 911 call about someone entering the pool facility without authorization." She furrowed her brow, heart thudding. "I'm not trespassing. I live here. I'm on the HOA board. I'm closing the pool for the season. Do you have ID?" Jada didn't flinch. "Yeah, I do." She reached calmly into her tote and handed them her driver's license, her HOA ID badge, and a printed email from the HOA manager confirming her assignment for that day. The officers examined the documents. One of them looked visibly uncomfortable now. "This seems to check out." "It does check out," Jada said evenly. "But it's not the first time someone like me has been seen as a problem, just for existing." The officers exchanged glances. As the moment settled, the suburban silence was pierced again, this time by the slow click of sensible shoes walking across pavement. Martha was finally emerging from her hiding spot, arms folded across her cardigan, face flushed but defiant. She walked up to the gate, clearly trying to play innocent. "I just want to make sure everything was all right." "I didn't recognize her," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Jada walked toward the gate, not breaking eye contact. You live across the street from me. Martha blinked. I wasn't sure. I didn't know you were with the HOA. It's in the newsletter. It's on the website. We voted at the last general meeting, Jada replied. You were there. Silence. One of the officers stepped in. Ma'am, he said to Martha, you understand that filing a false police report is a serious matter? I didn't file anything false, she snapped, taken aback. You described a suspicious person committing a crime. That could have gone a lot worse, he said sternly. Next time, check your facts. Martha stammered, but the officer turned away, uninterested in her excuses. Jada exhaled slowly. Am I free to finish my work now? She asked the officers. They nodded. Yes, ma'am. Sorry for the inconvenience. After they left, Jada stood still for a moment, watching the gate, letting the wind cool her off. Across the street, Martha retreated into her house. But Jada knew this wasn't the end of the story. Something had shifted, not just between her and Karen, but in how the neighborhood would see what happened next. Because Jada wasn't going to let it go quietly. She had recorded the interaction. She had names, timestamps, and a neighborhood forum where stories like this needed to be told. And as the sun dipped low and the shadows stretched long across the pavement, she realized Karen had made a mistake bigger than just a call to 911. She had exposed something, and that exposure was about to bring consequences. Martha Cunningham slept fitfully that night, while she clutched her blanket in a faux sense of suburban innocence. Her name was already buzzing through neighborhood group chats. Screenshots of a Reddit thread titled, HOA, Karen calls cops on black board member. Backfires hilariously, had started circulating, complete with cropped photos from public social media and bits of video Jada had discreetly taken during the police interaction. A couple of residents had been walking nearby when it all went down, and one had caught the sirens on video with commentary like, "Here we go again with Martha." The neighborhood Facebook group, once filled with lost dog alerts and lawn fertilization tips, had turned into a digital courtroom, and Karen was on trial. But the fallout wasn't just digital. The very next morning, Jada walked into the HOA's small administrative office, laptop in hand, and requested a meeting with the HOA president. His name was Brian, a balding man with gold-rimmed glasses and a well-meaning, I don't want to cause trouble demeanor. Jada had always found him tolerable, if not a little spineless. But today, she wasn't in the mood for soft neutrality. I'd like to file a formal complaint, she said, placing a neatly typed document on the desk. Martha Cunningham called the police on me while I was fulfilling official HOA duties. That's not just disrespectful, it's reckless and racially motivated. Brian blinked. Wow, okay. I mean, I heard something happen, but I didn't realize it was that serious. It could have escalated, and she knew what she was doing. She saw a black woman at the pool and assumed I didn't belong. Despite me living here, despite me being elected to this board, Brian adjusted his glasses. Do you want to press charges? I want an apology, and I want a review of her status on the Community Watch subcommittee. She's misusing her position to harass people. Brian nodded slowly. We can bring this up at the next board meeting, but be prepared for pushback. You know how some of the folks are around here. I do. That's why I'm not letting it slide. Outside the HOA office, news of the incident had spread wider than Jada expected. Turns out, one of the officers involved was the cousin of her friend Sasha, who lived 2 neighborhoods over. Sasha had posted a thread on X, formerly Twitter, complete with video snippets, context, and a call to action. Y'all imagine doing your volunteer HOA job and getting the cops called on you just for existing. Let's talk about Karen privilege. The post had over 40,000 likes in less than 24 hours. Within 2 days, Jada's inbox was full. Local journalists wanted statements. Community leaders offered to help her file civil complaints. But the most surprising email came from a name she didn't recognize. Amanda Castillo, a Latina woman who lived in the northwest corner of Oak Ridge Estates. Subject line, "You're not alone." The message read, "Hi Jada, I saw what happened, and I'm so sorry. I've had issues with Martha too. Last year, she called code enforcement on me for having too many guests over for a quinceañera. She claimed we were violating occupancy limits. We weren't. I didn't say anything at the time because I didn't want to stir the pot. But I want you to know, I've got your back. Amanda, that one hit Jada differently. Because it wasn't just about her. Martha had a history. And the more people talked, the more stories surfaced. One neighbor remembered when Martha questioned a teenage boy walking his dog after dark. He was 15, mixed race, and lived 2 doors down. Another woman recalled being asked if she was a house cleaner while gardening outside her own home. Jada started compiling it all into a single document, which she titled The Pattern. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, the clubhouse was packed. Normally, they barely filled 6 folding chairs. That night, people stood along the walls, some with arms crossed, others with their phones out, filming. Martha showed up, too. She wore a crisp blouse and stiff slacks, lips pressed in that performative, I'm composed way. But her eyes betrayed her nerves. She scanned the room, clearly thrown off by how many people were in attendance and who they were. Not just the regular retirees. Younger families, people of color, residents who usually stayed quiet suddenly had something to say. The HOA president tapped the mic. Before we begin the regular agenda, board member Jada Harris has requested to address a community concern. Jada stood up slowly, holding the pattern in her hand. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She started by calmly recounting the events of that Sunday, the task she was performing, the police arrival, Martha's statement, and the potential consequences she could have faced had the officers not acted professionally. Then she shifted. She spoke about systemic bias, about the quiet ways racism festers in polite communities, about how assumptions become threats when weaponized by people with privilege. And then she read from the messages she'd received from Amanda, from parents, from teens, from others who had been silently targeted. This isn't just about me. This is about how some of us have had to shrink ourselves in our own neighborhood to make others feel comfortable. That stops tonight. Silence fell over the room. And then something unexpected happened. An older white man stood up in the back. My name's Dennis. I'm a Navy vet. Been here 20 years. I just want to say, I saw what happened, and it wasn't right. Martha, this is the 3rd time I've heard your name come up in situations like this. It ain't a coincidence. Another woman raised her hand. I live 2 doors down from Amanda. I remember that party. It was beautiful. But the next day, code enforcement came. We all knew it was you, Martha. Jada stayed seated as person after person stood up, not just to defend her, but to finally push back against the fear and passivity that had allowed someone like Martha to go unchecked for so long. Martha tried to respond. I was only doing what I thought was best. No, Brian interrupted gently. You acted on bias. And as president of the HOA, I'm recommending a formal review of your committee involvement. Effective immediately, you're suspended from the community watch group. There were murmurs of agreement. Jada didn't cheer. She didn't gloat. She just nodded. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reckoning. What Martha didn't know, what she never bothered to see, was that her assumptions were being recorded, remembered, and now resisted. She had exposed herself, and the community, it turned out, was ready to look in the mirror. After the HOA meeting, the neighborhood buzzed like a shaken beehive. For the first time in Oak Ridge Estate's history, people were talking not just about bylaws and trash schedules, but about accountability, about who held power, and who was constantly asked to justify their existence. Jada Harris hadn't intended to become the face of neighborhood reform. But once the lid was off, there was no putting it back. The next week was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that comes right before a storm breaks. Martha Cunningham kept to herself. Her blinds stayed drawn. No early morning strolls in a visor. No clipboard patrols through the neighborhood. The woman who once walked with puffed-up authority now shuffled from mailbox to front door like a ghost caught in daylight. Whispers followed her. Not loud or cruel, just honest. She really called the cops on her own board member? You know, this wasn't the first time. She messed with the wrong one this time. And she had. Because Jada was no ordinary resident. What Martha hadn't known, what most of the HOA didn't realize, was that Jada Harris wasn't just a tech consultant. That was her day job, sure. But behind the scenes, Jada had spent the last 7 years building a grassroots coalition focused on racial equity and public accountability in suburban spaces. She had quietly advised city council candidates, organized public forums, and been part of a national initiative on anti-bias training for homeowner associations across the country. She even co-authored a white paper titled Policing Privilege, Racial Bias in Suburban Civil Spaces. She hadn't brought any of this up before. Part of her wanted to just live in peace, enjoy her house, walk her dog, sip lemonade on her porch without making everything political. But Martha changed that. The morning after the HOA meeting, Jada got a call from a woman named Renee Alexander, a local journalist with a popular podcast series called Suburbia Unfiltered. Renee had heard about the pool incident and wanted to feature Jada on an upcoming episode about community conflict and racial bias. "I know this might feel fast," Renee said over speakerphone, "but your story hits on everything we've been trying to highlight. And people are listening now." Jada hesitated. She didn't want to be reduced to a viral clip or turned into a symbol. But if her experience could spark more than just whispers, if it could lead to change, maybe it was worth it. "All right," she said finally. "Let's talk." The episode aired 5 days later. It was called The Pool, the Power, and the Pattern. In it, Jada told the full story, calmly, precisely, and with the kind of measured grace that made it hard for anyone to twist her words. She spoke about the moment she saw the sirens, the heat in her chest, the old fear that never really left, no matter how educated, how qualified, or how put together she appeared. She spoke about Martha, yes, but not as a villain. She framed her as a product of a larger issue. "This isn't just about one woman calling 911, Jada said during the interview. "It's about what happens when communities let those assumptions go unchallenged. When we say nothing, when we give silence the space to grow." The episode went viral, not just locally, but nationally. And with it came attention. A local news station aired a follow-up segment. Then a regional council reached out about having Jada lead a training session for HOA leaders across the state. A university invited her to speak. But the twist came when a major civil liberties foundation contacted her. They had read her paper. They'd listened to the podcast. And they offered her a grant to create a toolkit for HOAs across the country on how to spot and stop racial profiling within their own communities. That's when everything shifted. Jada sat at her kitchen table late into the night. Grant agreement spread before her, thinking about how this all started. A key, a clipboard, a woman across the street who couldn't see past her own fear. She took the deal. Weeks passed. The energy from the HOA meeting didn't fade. It crystallized. Several residents, inspired by Jada's stand, formed a diversity and inclusion committee. Martha, still suspended, avoided the meetings, though she was often seen peeking out from behind her curtains. Some speculated she might move, but she didn't. Instead, something more surprising happened. She requested a meeting. Jada got the email one morning. Short, blunt. "I like to talk. No cameras. No audience. Just us." "Martha." Jada stared at it for a moment, fingers hovering above the keyboard. She didn't know Martha anything, and yet curiosity tugged at her. Not forgiveness, not sympathy, just the unshakable belief that even conversations with the hardest people could shift something, even if just by an inch. She agreed. They met at the park. It was nearly empty. Kids were still in school. The wind rustled through the trees, the scent of pine and fresh-cut grass filling the silence. Martha sat on the bench first. Jada approached calmly, shoulders back. "I didn't expect you to say yes," Martha said. "I didn't say yes for you," Jada replied. "I said yes because you asked. That matters a little." Martha looked older now. Not physically, but in energy, like the weight of her actions had finally caught up. "I'm sorry," she said, without preamble. "I was wrong. I saw you, and I didn't really see you. I reacted out of fear, not facts." Jada said nothing at first. Let the apology sit. "You know," she said finally, "you didn't just call the cops on me. You called them on your neighbor, your HOA board member, a woman walking distance from your front door. What did you think I was going to do? Steal the chlorine?" Martha winced. "I thought I thought I was being careful. No, Jada said. You were being careless. With my safety. With your assumptions. Silence again. I read your article. Martha added softly. Someone sent it to me. You're impressive. I didn't move here to impress anyone, Jada said. I moved here to live. Martha nodded slowly. I know I've got work to do. Jada stood. Then do it. She didn't shake her hand. She didn't promise anything. She walked away, not out of malice, but because she had more important things to do. The story of Jada Harris didn't end there. She went on to lead the statewide initiative she'd helped design. The toolkit rolled out to over 1,400 homeowner associations, changing the way they trained their boards and responded to complaints. She became a recurring guest on public forums about race and equity in shared community spaces. But back in Oak Ridge Estates, she was still just Jada. She waved to kids riding bikes. She helped organize the summer block party. She laughed with neighbors, shared recipes, and started a garden that attracted butterflies all spring. The pool reopened the next season. Clean, safe, welcoming. And this time, when Jada walked in with keys in hand, no one called the cops. They just waved. Because now, they knew who she was. And more importantly, they knew who they were becoming.